Alabama played their first Final Four game ever. It did not end like Alabama wanted it to end. And primarily, Lance, because UConn is just an incredible machine right now.
Yeah, look, man, maybe I slept a little bit on UConn. I know it's a team that's sitting there at 36-3. They're your defending national champions. But the way Alabama played, making 9 of their first 12 perimeter shots, exactly what they needed to do. But, I mean, UConn answered it every turn. And I will say this, just sitting on the couch watching, I wasn't on postgame with you guys, UConn got the calls. Alabama got gypped on a lot of calls. And I'm looking for this more as if they would have gotten the calls, Alabama covers this game. I don't think they were going to win this game, but I think it would have been a lot closer. Give Alabama a lot of credit getting to their first Final Four. They played their asses off, but UConn's just that good.
Yeah, my takeaway, Brown, was for, 37 minutes and 19 seconds, something like that. They were toe-to-toe with what I think will end up being the best team in the country after tonight's game. But the moment did not look too big for that team in their first Final Four. And as you said, shooting 70% from three in a dome stadium with 76,000 fans in the first half. I was talking to some UConn fans yesterday at breakfast, and they were like, I know we lost 3 games this year, but that was the toughest team we've played this year. And we were all talking at halftime, and these are UConn season ticket holders. They were like, if we can just get them down to hitting 50% of their threes, we'll win the game. And if they keep hitting all these threes, we're just going to tip our hat and say good luck in the national championship. I thought it was an impressive performance. It just looked a little at the end like when, an 8-0 run by UConn, and then Alabama went on a 7-0 run to get back. And then it was a 7-0 run by UConn, and then Alabama did a 7-0 run to get back. And then that next 8-0 run, it looked like all those runs to catch back up and get even gassed Alabama, and they just ran out of gas at the end, it looked like to me.
Well, and you just don't have an answer for Donovan Clingan. That's what's going to be so awesome about tonight. And I want to say this, Clingan is a better player than Edey. I mean, the way
I was going the other way. I think Edey's a better player than Clingan. Because Clingan, Edey played 40 minutes in the semifinals.
I get that, but he doesn't move around. I mean, Clingan's doing so many athletic things. Next level, Clingan will be such a better NBA player. But I think the way he's playing right now, he is, the way he's defending right now, he has completely changed their defense.
Oh, no, I would agree with you there. I think next level, I would take Clingan. I think Clingan's a better athlete. But if they officiate the way they officiate Edey in this championship game, he just plants himself there. That's how he can play 40 minutes. He doesn't move. He can sit there for 40 minutes and trot up and down the court and then plant himself in the lane or right on the lane and doesn't move. I think Edey will have his way with Clingan. I thought Bama's bigs did okay with Clingan for a while in that game until at the end, but he was so disruptive defensively. It's the other players where I think UConn would win the game tonight. And I think it was the other players that ended up the way they defended on the perimeter against Alabama's threes in the second half. They made an adjustment at halftime that just kept Alabama from getting the same looks from three that they got in the first half. And I was so proud of the Alabama fans who were there and that basketball team, Brownie. It was just a surreal experience.
Yeah, Dunaway's coverage from there presented by MyBookie.ag. Code next round where UConn is a 7-point favorite in tonight's game. We'll talk a lot more about tonight's game. We're not just going to focus on what has happened. We'll look forward to it. Jay Billis with us at 10:30 to discuss that and Alabama's performance in the Final Four and obviously now Cal Arkansas. The most amazing stat to me, this is the most amazing stat. Like you look at stats all over this game and say, here's where UConn won it, here's where Alabama lost it. The most amazing stat to me, and this just speaks volumes about UConn's defense, Alabama only squeezed off 23 three-pointers. That's it. Yeah. 23 three-point attempts. That is so far below what Nate Oats wanted, and it was all their defense.
Yeah, 5th fewest of the season. They averaged 30 per game. And Dunaway's right, the adjustments Hurley was able to make at halftime. And I said this going in, like I thought it was such a difficult – if everybody out there has the ability to hit threes. And if they're all on, and it looked like they were all on in the first half, I don't know what you do if you're UConn, but they made the adjustments in the second half. That stat, only getting off 23 threes, and UConn in that chaotic game only turning the basketball over 4 times. It just shows you they're just an airtight team.
Yeah, but Dunaway, 23 three-point attempts. If Alabama just gets to their average, It's a ball game late. I mean, that was an incredible credit to UConn's defense that they only allowed those 23 attempts.
Yeah, and if you noticed, I don't know if it shows up on the stat sheet, but it does on Nate Oats' analytics. They also shot more mid-range shots than I've ever seen them shoot in Nate Oats' time in Tuscaloosa. Like they were having to dribble in to the big guy to kick it back out for threes, and then sometimes they would get so deep in the clock that there were a lot of 7-foot, 8-foot jump shots that they were throwing up, the 7-foot, 8-foot twos, which Nate Oats hates, but they were having to take them because they were running out of clock, or that was the only shot that they could get off that was an open shot. So they did in the second half get them out of what they wanted to do offensively. And then the post game locker room discussion when I got into there, and I know we'll hear from some of that. If not, it's all over our social media, thanks to our friends at MyBookie. It's a down locker room after the game because you can't really at that moment soak in everything you've accomplished because you wanted it to continue. But when they arrived back in Tuscaloosa, there were fans there. I was at the team hotel when they were leaving yesterday morning. Still hadn't sunk in with them yet. They were still a lot of long faces a little bit. It was starting to turn a little bit that they had made history. But it was a special run through the NCAA tournament. And again, I just go back to looking out at 76,000 fans and a stream of crimson all the way into the upper deck of the fans who showed up for this basketball team. It was just like it was when I was with Auburn in 2019, just surreal to see teams from our state there. And as long as Nate's at Alabama and Bruce is at Auburn, I don't think we're done yet. I think I think despite what Arkansas is doing, two of the best SEC programs in the conference are right here in our state.
Don't you think big men get called differently though, and it benefits them?
Oh, yeah.
Most of the time. Now, sometimes you'll get a ref that's any block shot by a big man, he's going to get whistled. But I think most of the time they get the benefit of the doubt. I think that's true of Edie and Clingan.
Yeah, and look, and I'm going to contradict myself because I just want to give you full disclosure. I like Purdue. I told you guys on Saturday, I've got a feeling that Purdue is going to – and Purdue played one of the worst games I've seen them play all year, and they still win the game going away by 13 against NC State. Braden Smith was awful, but if Purdue's guards play like they've played the majority of the season, I think Purdue's got an opportunity to win this game. So I don't know if Clingan's going to get the best of Edie right now. I just think Clingan's the better player.
Yeah. Dunaway, it did.
And I like Edie's a better college player. Clingan will be a better NBA, but I like UConn tonight.
So you could not be any more opposite than you are right now. That's what you're telling me.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
That is perfect.
Yeah, I know, but he's defending Clingan is better than Edie, but he's going with Purdue. I think Edie's better than Clingan, but I'm going with UConn. It's crazy.
Well, Clingan at least will attempt some three-pointers. I mean, that's what they like. Edie's got 2 3-point attempts his whole career.
Yeah, I mean, Clingan's still got a lot to work on his range, but I'm just talking about, man, how he has become a defensive force. Because this was a guy that was just a contributor off the bench last year. And now he's become dominant, especially in his last 10 games.
So, Dunaway, my fear for Alabama, though, in that game was you look up, at the 10-minute mark and UConn's already up 15. Like Alabama didn't belong and they play scared and they play tight. And I'm not trying to make this a moral victory for Alabama. It was a victory for them to get to the Final Four. They'd never done that. But I'm just saying that was my fear for Alabama is that UConn starts that game on like a 12-2 run. Nate Oats got to burn an early timeout and say, guys, settle down. This is just a basketball game. And that was not the case at all. I mean, Alabama – as you said, went toe-to-toe with them for a very long time. I feared that for Alabama, though, Jim, and I don't know if you did the same, that it was going to be like a 12-2 start by UConn, and Alabama was in a hole they couldn't get out of before, the 10-minute mark.
Yeah, you guys know Coach Lenny Acup, who loves our show now at Lipscomb. He was sitting behind me on media row. He was first row of the seats, and that's where all the legendary coaches sit. It was Lenny, then it was Purdue legend Gene Cady, Roy Williams, the dude from Oregon, the dude from Baylor, it was on Bruce Pearl. They were all on the row right behind me on press row. And I was coming back at halftime from going to the restroom, and Lenny, I was like, so they're still in it, 44-40. And he gave me some X's and O comment, and then he said they would take right now down 4 with 4 minutes to go, because then all the pressure's on UConn. If they're within 4 in that final media timeout, like we talked with North Carolina, and it came true against North Carolina, Alabama just couldn't get it to that pressure point on the defending national champs #1 seed, to where the pressure would have been on them in that last media timeout. Those runs to start the second half, 8-0, 7-0, 8-0 runs, gave UConn the comfort to finish that game out. They were close, man. I know the score ended up being double digits down the stretch, but I thought it was a heck of an effort.
Yeah, I agree. The score was not indicative of the way that game really played out. But UConn, I mean, this run they're on, I mean, it's their 11th NCAA tournament win by 13-plus points. And they have just been flat out dominant. I think the difference, though, I think Purdue, with all of their experience, you mentioned what Lenny told you, and we've kind of talked about that. UConn has not been in one of these tight games. Just got a feeling that Purdue is going to make it tight down the stretch, and we'll see how UConn responds.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dunaway. They never could. In the second, I think in the first half, UConn might have felt the pressure a little bit. They might have been like, okay, we've throughout this tournament, this game has been over at this point, right? This game is far from over. But they made a championship response to feeling that pressure. That's what North Carolina couldn't do. North Carolina wasn't a championship team because when Alabama reached that pressure point with Carolina, they couldn't respond in kind. UConn did, and that's championship material right there when a team challenges you. And it was a tie game, at the 12-minute mark, something like that, 10-minute mark. It's still 56-56 or something like that. That's deeper than anybody's taken them in the tournament in a long time. And they responded with championship material. I mean, that's what you expect out of UConn.
Yeah, and Mark Sears, that early third foul on Grant Nelson. I think Alabama's defense just wasn't as aggressive down the stretch as it had been until they picked up those third fouls. And however it rotated around, Nick Pringle really didn't play a big factor in the final 12 minutes of the game. He wasn't, for most of the time when Klingon was out there, Pringle was out there, and that wasn't the case in the final 12 minutes. Probably an offensive switch there, having five guys who could score the basketball a lot easier on the floor at that point. They gave Diabate a run down the lane to see if his physicality inside could make an impact. They shot their bullets and just didn't have the right silver bullet at the end to get the W.